All right, so this is the video which is about how to kind of get about Aspire, how to get around, and what are the tools that you need to know, and how do you use Aspire? Basically, is what this kind of one down to, particularly with the drawing side of things. All right, so we're going to be using these section of tools here on the left, to be able to draw what we need to do. Later on, we'll be clicking this button over here, and we'll be going over our toolpaths. We'll be telling Aspire what we want to do with those drawings. Do we want to cut it out? Do we want to cut a pocket? Do we want to ramp it up? What does that look like? But as for the moment, what we're doing is we're working in the space here with all of our drawing tools. Okay. Now, the other thing that you need to know is that I strongly suggest you use a mouse as opposed to your tracker pad. The reason why is because it makes it a whole lot easier to get about. You can use the wheel in the middle to zoom in and out. When you click and hold down on your wheel, you can pan and move your work about, and it just makes life a whole lot simpler just to be able to do those basic things. And the other handy dandy tool to know, of course, is if you press Control and Z down together, you will undo whatever mistakes you've made. So if I make a thing in there and I actually didn't want to, I can press Control Z and Control Z again and delete it and just go back. Right? Super handy tool. So moving on, for this project, I'm going to be showing you, we're going to be using this one here. Now we're going to be starting with drawing this section here, which is 240 in height by 240 wide. It's got a radius on the corners of 12 millimeters. So what we want to do is we want to click on our Draw Rectangle tool and just draw something out in the middle there. And whatever size we draw it at, it'll give us the dimensions of whatever we've drawn in there. Now we want to highlight those and change them to 240 just by typing them in. And that was 240 by 240 millimeters. And the radius, which is an external radius, which means it curves outside like that. If we go with an internal radius, that's kind of got that slightly different pocket. So that we wanted to have a radius of, what was it, 12 millimeters. Excellent. So that's already drawn on there. We just click apply, and that gives us what we want. Now, with every shape that is drawn on here, when you click on it once, it'll give you all the lines and show you what that line is all together. That'll come handy later on when we start cutting bits and pieces out. And then if you click on it the second time, it'll bring up the nodes. All right, and then you can click on the center and move it about. Oop. There we go. You can move it about this way. If you click on the ones in the corners, it will change the size of it. So I strongly suggest that you don't move it about by the outside lines, but that you just move it about by the center. Right? And also another important thing, that when we're using Aspire, you generally don't want to have your work too close to the edges, because otherwise it doesn't allow enough room for the tool to cut out the work around the edge. All right, and you always, we're going to be screwing the material itself down by screws in the corners, and you don't want to have your work too close to those screws, so that otherwise the tools don't do that. And you'll come across that later, but it's just a good thing to know. It's always a good idea to have it a reasonable distance, 10 to 20 millimeters away from the edge there. Okay, so that's that. We've drawn our first shape. Now what we need to do is we need to start cutting some other shapes out from there. Okay, so if we go through to this shape here, we'll kind of figure out what we want. Let's start cutting out this this piece here, and we can do another one at the top here. Now this here happens to be 18.5 millimeters high, and from this distance to here, it is 90 millimeters long. Right, so we do another drawing here. Now we want this particular section to be, as it said, 18.5 millimeters high. Oh, sorry, that's at the bottom one, 0.5 millimeters high down there. And the top, it says 90, but we're actually going to make it at 120, and I'll show you that why in a moment. Now, if I try and create that with a 12 millimeter radius, it's going to come up as a square. The reason why is because the radius is the distance from the center to the edge, And if the distance from the center to the edge is smaller than half of the height, then there's actually not enough room to put the radius in there. So if we change that there to, say, 9 millimeters, and we go create, that's going to give us enough room to be able to place that in there. So now we've just gone and created two of them. We'll delete the one that we don't want, and we'll move it down to where we want it. Now it doesn't, in these plans here, it doesn't actually give us the dimension for the height. However, we know that this here is 20 millimeters and this here is just slightly bigger than that. So how about we position it at 25 millimeters up from the bottom? Now there's no clear way to go about doing that. So what I suggest doing is just creating another rectangle that is 25 millimeters high. I actually deleted the other one, and just placing it so it connects to the bottom, so that we know that is precisely 25 millimeters high. And we want to create another rectangle, and this one is actually going to be that same height as that first one because I accidentally deleted it. And we go apply. Oh, yep, and we do want it to have those edges on there. Okay, so this one here, click on it twice so we can move it down. So we know that that now is in the right height. What we want to do is I just want to change this now to 90 millimeters wide, because we wanted, in this plan here, it says that this from here to the edge of here should be 90 millimeters, which is what that's talking about. So if we click on this, which is 90 millimeters wide, we move it to the edge, and we just line that up so that the edge of that radius there lines up with that 90 millimeters. And we can delete that, and we know that this is here. Okay, so what we're wanting to do now is we're wanting to join these two shapes together to make one single cutout. Now there's a couple of different ways to do it. If we select that outside tool there, and if we select both of the shapes, we can use these series of 3 tools here to either join it together, to cut one out, like so. So this one here will cut one out from the other one. This one here will do the reverse. Or what I suggest everybody does is use this interactive trim tool, and it just goes along and it cuts all the edges out, and it means you've just got a lot more control as you go, right? This tool is absolutely valuable. You use it all the time. Now, what happens now is I've clicked on this tool here, clicked on this line here, and it shows that they've already actually joined together. So I don't need to go joining them. However, if this was one line and that was another, what I would do is I'd select that, I'd select this other line here, which would be separate, and I would use this one down here, which would join them all together. However, we don't need to do that, so we can just kind of carry on. All right, so those are the basic tools that you need to do this. So I'm going to pause this video, and I'll show you what it looks like once it's all completed, and maybe I'll give you a few other tips as we go. Okay, another good thing to know regarding how to kind of position things. I showed you how to position things using a rectangle tool earlier. Another way to do things is to use the guides. Now, how to create a guide is you click on this ruler space on the left here, and you hold down and you drag it across, and you can see the little numbers that pop up as you go across, right? So I can see this one here shows me that this so it'll sit this line here at 150 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the entire section here. I'm going to move it all across, and I'm going to move it back, right? So I've just moved the entire work, so the edge of it is set up to be precisely line up with this guide here at 150 millimeters, right? So, or negative 150. So that's negative 140, which means it's 10 mil inside, and this is negative 130, which means it's 20 mil inside. So what I can do now is I can double click on that, and I can move it over so that it lines up and it will kind of magnetically connect or snap to that guide. All right. So that means that now I know that the edge of this, the edge of my phone cutout perfectly aligns with the edge of, or with 20 millimeters in from the edge of the work, which is what it shows us in these plans here. It shows us that the edge of the phone here should be 20 millimeters away from the edge, as long as that works roughly for you. So I'm going to do the same with the top here. So the top already lines up with 160, the 160 point. So if I bring that down to 140 and I double click here, that's just going to slide up to line up with that point there. Okay, so that's how we connect that tool. Okay, so now another important thing for you to know as you go about this final point of kind of cutting things out. Now, before you cut out all of the edges of this pocket, you actually want that pocket, so this outside shape, to be extended down below. Because what's going to happen is that you're going to cut that out first, and you're going to want the tool, the 6 millimeter mill tool, as it's coming down, to go down past there and to go out and cut that groove out. And then once that's all done, then this one here, this path is going to come along afterwards and then cut that little edge off, right? Because otherwise what's going to happen is that because of the size of the tool path that's going to come along here, and you'll end up getting this little groove cut into the edge of it, or this little radius, all right, and it's not really going to allow the cord to go through. So you want to have the cord for the bottom of this here poking out past it, all right? So it's kind of good to think about the process and how it's being made as you're drawing things up, so that you can keep that in mind as you draw it, to make sure that you're doing the paths to align with the tool that's to align with the process that you're using. All right, now this is pretty much close to being finished. I've got my outside shape, so I've got 2 pockets here, and it's all good to go. However, these here are some quite sharp edges, and there is another comparison to what this little shape there is, and there are some other tools here which can come in quite handy for that. So it's this little tool down here. All right, cool. And when you get that open, it looks something like this. So what you can do is you can kind of select the different type of shape that you're after. Right, so once you've got it behaving properly, you just click on the normal fillet and it will go through. You can see what kind of a radius you want, because it's a smaller size than the other ones. And we can see on our plans here that this radius here is a little bit smaller than the 12 mil. I've just put in 5, and it works quite well just to kind of click in there and tidy that up. Might as well do that down here as well. Just make that look pretty. Right, fantastic. So so at this point, this is pretty much all good to go. All of the drawings are completed, and we can now set that up for the toolpaths. So I'll see you in the other video if you need help with that.